Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, December 29th, 2022. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Steve Wilkes and I round out the year with our annual Brewing Disasters show. Steve and I share some stories from you about brewing gone wrong and taste some delicious homebrew that definitely didn't go wrong. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find archives of our audio and video shows. And if you go to basicbrewingshop.com, you can find our DVDs and our brewer's logbooks. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing. And many thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. And I'll say it here in a couple of minutes, but go to basicbrewingradio.com. And look for the episode description of this episode and download and print out your PDF of this year's Disaster Show bingo card and play along. Well, enough of this. Let's dive in, shall we? Well, Steve Wilkes, here we are at the annual Disaster Show.
It's the end of another brilliant year of beer podcasting at Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing Video.
Yes, we'll just go with that.
We'll just go with that. So it's Disaster Show week.
It is the Disaster Show.
I look forward to this every year.
Well, good.
I've brought content.
Yes, and you brought a yeah.
We'll cross that bridge later.
Yes. And we have to remind people that we have Disaster Show bingo to go along with the Disaster Show. Mm-hmm. And if you look in the description of this episode on basicbrewingradio.com, or I'll probably put it out there on Twitter maybe, a link to this PDF, which is an empty grid on the bottom of the half of the page. And then there are 20 categories. There are 16 squares on the bingo card. Right. But 20 categories up on the top that you have to write in yourself. So you make your own bingo card.
Right.
And these are topics that might come up in these stories. So you want to read the 20, and you've made out your own bingo card.
I have. I'll take Charles Nelson Riley to block. wait, wrong show. I'll take Paul Lynn. Oh, Sammy.
Oh. So read us the 20 categories.
Okay. This is from 1 through 20. Angry spouse.
Yes.
Blood.
Ooh.
Beer, wort, spill, spray.
Bill / wort, spilled or sprayed.
Spilled or sprayed. Broken glass. Number 5, foreign object in beer. No. Gonna need a passport for
accidentally.
That. Yeah.
You can have a foreign object in your beer on purpose.
Tipsy brewer. Just one of my favorite comics. Bad pun from host.
That should just be a free space.
Since he's a free space. Award 1. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beer dumped.
Uh-huh.
Late night. Yeah, that's a sleeper category. Leaky, I thought it was leaky leg. I was like, well, depends.
That's what I've got. Yeah, well, that's what you get when you have a leaky leg.
That's right. Leaky keg. We'll go with that. Number 12, fire. Number 13, secret repairs. Number 14, obscure host from reference.
No, obscure host reference.
Oh, well, yes, right.
From host.
Yes. What did I say?
I don't know.
Something about tomorrow. Weird ingredient. Brewing upgrade. No, yeah.
It's like if you break something and you get something new.
Okay, I got that.
Replace it.
Yeah. Stuck sparge. Yeah.
Careful.
18, bottle bomb. 19, helpful spouse.
Oh.
That can be a good or a bad thing. Number 20, and the final category. Ruined floor / furniture.
Okay. All right. And you've got your numbers.
I've got
you
my
just
numbers.
wrote down the numbers, and you didn't write down the words. You just put the numbers down, which I thought was pretty smart.
Saves
but you got to remember which is which. So now, for I think the 4th year in a row, homebrewer Scott Housel has sent in beers for us to sample during the show, and to celebrate the new soundboard that I have, and to utilize it, I wanted to actually get Scott's voice on the show. And for us, like we're doing this at, this is like 2:30 in the afternoon. And the chances that Scott would be available 2:30 on a Wednesday or a Tuesday afternoon, probably pretty slim. So, and we, after supper, we go to, we nap in our chairs. So we don't do things after hours anymore, you and I.
Not very frequently.
So anyway, I thought the best way to get all three of us together was to have one of us electronically. So Scott sent some beers. The first beer we're sipping on now, and here is Scott to tell us about this beer.
Hi, this is Scott Housel from Fort Lauderdale. First beer that you'll be tasting is the one with the panda sticker. That's the same as the Savvy Blanket IPA, which I'm calling hazy, but might change that. And it is the one without any dry hops. So there was an ounce of Nelson Sauvin at 5 minutes from the end of the boil, and then an ounce each of Hallertau Blanc, Nelson Sauvin, and Vic Secret hops. They all did a 20-minute hop stand at about 175. And then I fermented with the Lallemand New England ale yeast at right around 68 Fahrenheit, and then raised it a little bit. Alcohol's about 7.2 ABV. Original gravity about 1065, and the final gravity was about 1010.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that there aren't any dry hops in there, because there's a lot of hop character in this beer.
I am too.
You drink all. You're getting the dregs now because you drank all of yours.
Well, it was really good.
Yeah, it's super fruity and nice and fresh. And I've had these for a long time. I think he sent them in like October. But I mean, we've been trying to get together with him, to do a get together, all three of us show, and it just didn't work. There's been so much going on these past couple of months that didn't work. But I'm glad that we finally. It's not. I don't know that I would. The undry hopped version, I wouldn't call a hazy.
I wouldn't either.
It's just an IPA.
Yeah.
It's got some. It's a little bit hazy.
It's not as crisp looking as
right.
I don't know, like a German.
It's not crystal clear, but it's not hazy enough. It's my homebrew level of hazy.
I was going to say
without trying.
It's yeah. I got a hazy at home right now that you can't see through. I'm telling you, but it tastes good.
Well, that's delicious.
Yep.
So now we go to the meat of the presentation.
The roasted joint of the presentation.
Well, that's legal now, so
that's right.
This first story comes from Will, and I'm not sure where Will is from, but he says, "Dear James and Steve, for the first 5 years of homebrewing, I had no disasters worthy of sharing with you for your annual New Year's disaster show. To my chagrin, I find myself writing to you for the second year in a row about another doozy, which occurred in a basement." And Steve is studying his bingo card.
Yeah, I am.
A friend of mine and I organized a brew day / beer tasting at his girlfriend's restaurant. It was a great Saturday with about 12 of us brewing 50 liters of a Dunkelweiss in the industrial kitchen. Because of the festive nature of the brew day, I broke my golden rule of not drinking before I pitched the yeast. So maybe tipsy brewer?
Yeah.
Foreshadowing, he says. Is foreshadowing in there? Should be. While it is a boring rule, it might have helped me avoid the impending disaster. I was not going to ferment my half of the 50 liters under pressure since Steve's hand his face is in his hand. Under pressure, and by the way, that was we don't own the copyright, and that's a really cool song. Okay, since I was not going to ferment my half of the 50 liters under pressure, since I've heard that you get better result from Hefeweizen yeast in open fermentation, but at the last second, I changed my mind, probably because it's been sampling. Maybe what was to occur was a result of all the Belgian doubles and triples we were sampling. Oh, definitely tipsy brew. After what was obviously one too many, I forced the Spunding valve onto my Fermentosaurus. Fermentosaurus.
You never force a Spunding valve.
Not thinking any more about it, we put the fermenter into the basement of the restaurant and continued a fun evening. On Monday, I stopped by the restaurant around 8 a.m. to check on how the beer was making out. My friend's girlfriend let me into the basement. We opened up the basement, and then the stench of stale beer hit our noses. When we turned on the lights, we saw a puddle of what was left of my 25 liters of the Dunkelweiss that had not already soaked into the cement. I was horrified and immediately set about cleaning it up. To add stress to the situation, my boss was coming by my classroom for the yearly review at 10:45. Oh, Lord. So I had to mop the basement of the restaurant while trying to avoid getting any beer on myself, since I would not have time to go home to change. Try to imagine the sweat dripping off my brow as I washed my shoes off before hurrying to school to give a class in front of my boss. The class went well, but the beer was gone. I was so dejected and upset that I neglected the fermenter in the basement where it sat for months. I didn't even want to see the fermenter because, of course, it had malfunctioned. It couldn't have been me, right? Wrong. With enough time between me and the incident, I decided I should do something about the fermenter, either throw it away or clean it. Upon inspecting the fermenter, I could see that the Spunding valve was covered in beer and yeast residue. I realized that I had put the Spunding valve on the beer out connection and not the CO2 in connection. So the pressure building up during fermentation simply pushed the contents of the fermenter out through the Spunding valve. I can only imagine what it looked like when the beer was spurting out the Spunding valve all over the basement floor. I never should have broken my golden rule not to drink until after the yeast is pitched, because this never would have happened if I'd put the Spunding valve on the correct connection. And this doesn't even come close to the biggest accident I had this year. I will save that story for next year. And no, the golden rule did not save me from a shower of beer. So, Merry Christmas, Will. He sent a picture of the restaurant basement. But he said, please do not publish it, though, since I do not want it to get back to my friend's girlfriend. So how many you got? One.
Well, I just went with one, and I also thought that, to be fair to the game, you should only get one check mark per letter.
Oh, okay.
That's my self-imposed rule.
All right.
Because I could have almost gone with helpful spouse on that, but they weren't married.
The girl. No, it's the girlfriend of his friend.
I could, yeah.
So that's it's getting into some math I don't want to talk about. Anyway. Jason writes, hello, James and Steve. I've been homebrewing for over 10 years. Not prolific, but I get my 4 to 5 brews in per year. My setup is a 3-vessel system using an esky, or cooler, as a mash tun, similar to your old system before you upgraded to electric brewing. Through all these years, I've had 1 or 2 brews that were, let's say, challenging to drink, but never had the need to dump a batch voluntarily. Foreshadowing. When I first started all-grain brewing, I used a glass thermometer, but in typical fashion, it was broken, either in a house move, careless owner placement, or something to do with the children. I'll blame it on them with no recollection of events, but surely would not be an impossibility. Whatever did or did not happen, I got an upgrade to an electric thermometer with an alarm setting, which can let you know if your mash temperature is too high or too low. Mashing can now be monitored by having the temperature probe sit in the mash and checking the digital readout without opening the lid of the esky. Jason says, I don't usually play around too much with mashing temperature of my brews. I target between 65 to 69 degrees Celsius for the mash hour. He says, I'll let you convert that back to old money for Fahrenheit. Starting in the upper range of the saccharification temps will allow for any normal temperature drop over the mash hour and not get below the saccharification temperature range. One of my favorite beers is Hoegaarden, and I usually make one a year. I use raw wheat to assist with the cloudy finish and a little bit of oats to add some silky texture to the mouthfeel. I mention this just to add a bit of foodie context to the story, but will have no bearing on the rest of the tale. I preheat approximately 25 liters of strike water to 80 degrees Celsius. I normally start with adding 15 liters to the grain, give it a stir, and check the temperature to see if I need to add more. The water that's left over in the hot liquor tank is then topped up and reheated for sparging. He's got a little system going on. As brew-in-the-bag methods have shown us, the grain-to-grist ratios do not need to be closely followed, as was once thought. So if I need to add more water and have a runny mash, I'm not concerned. As the hot water is added to the probe often reads above the upper temp limit due to the water being in the 80 Celsius range. After stirring, it drops back down as the heat is equalized with the grain. This happened a few times during the start of the mash, which is not unusual. After adding more strike water for the third or fourth time, the temperature was staying stable at around 67. Not too bad, but we'll add a bit more to get around 69. Still at 67. It's okay. It's just the grain taking the heat out of the water. Add a bit more. Not much effect. Keep going. Mash tun looking full, but it's okay. Grain to grist ratio doesn't matter. Just won't need to sparge as much for the second runnings. Hot liquor tank is now empty. I tell myself the last bits of strike water must have had a lower temperature as I turned the heat off and it cooled down during that 10-minute period. That's why it doesn't have a lot of effect on the mash temp. Close the lid on the mash tun. Let it sit for an hour. I check on it every 2 to 3 minutes. I check on it every 2 to 3 times during the hour in case the temperature has dropped. Nope, rock solid. Awesome. Mash has finished. Take out the temperature probe and collect the first runnings. Yes, there is a lot of it. Only add 10 liters of sparge water for second runnings. Collect that, start the boil, and add the hops. Spice additions thrown in the last 5 minutes. Start cooling with the wort chiller and begin to clean up. Dump the spent grains in the bin. Clean the mash tun in the hot liquor tank. Start packing up the utensils. Pick up the temperature probe. It's still reading 67, even though it's been sitting on the bench the last 90 minutes. That's strange. It can't be wrong. It's digital. So as a test, I placed it in the fridge for 5 minutes. Still at 67. Whoops, what temperature did I mash at then? The wort did taste sweet at the end of the mash, so some conversion did occur. Doesn't matter. It might be okay. Temperature could have dropped during the hour mash to the right range, and all would be well with the world. Finished cooling the wort and ferment. All okay, so there must have been sugars for the yeast. Looking good. Jason says, when I transferred it to the keg, I did have a taste, but it's not good. But carrying on anyway, sometimes carbonation can have a wondrous effect on perceived flavor. Hook it up to the CO2 and leave it for a couple of weeks. Time to try it. Connected the beer to the keg and pour a glass. That tastes wrong. As I said, never had a dumper, but certainly it will certainly be in the challenging to drink range. I pin my hopes on the idea that the taste will age out over time. I can't give in now. I'll give it a week. Went to test it after a week. Opened the chest freezer to pour a beer, and what greets me? A pool of beer at the bottom of the freezer. What?
Good heavens.
How'd that happen? Turns out the O-ring on the quick disconnect was worn, and it allowed the contents to be pushed out of the keg while under pressure into the chest freezer. Better make sure the wife doesn't find out about this. I take out the empty keg and start bailing out the bottom of the chest freezer. Clean it all down with towels and give a final wipe using sanitizer to prevent mold. Jason says, unlike some of our brethren, I've learned to wash the towels so the wife doesn't find out. From tasting this beer, I'm pretty sure it was going to be my first dumper, but technically it purged itself, so I gladfully keep my record intact. I've now gone back to a glass thermometer as I've lost all faith in technology. In the months since, I've had a few issues with leaky keg connections due to O-rings or sticky quick connects not seating correctly, so I've become more vigilant at checking the connections for leaks when hooking up. So it's kind of two disasters in one on that batch.
Yeah, no kidding.
And Jason says, awesome show. Thanks for all you do. I often listen to the show when I'm traveling and find it best when first getting on the plane rather than watching a movie. This means I don't need to listen to the pilot bragging about how he's going to fly the plane or which doors need to be locked and cross-checked, and which pauses the video, interrupting my viewing pleasure. So there you go. So do we count that as a dumper? A dumped batch for the bingo?
I don't think I can.
It dumped itself.
I agree with it was self-dumping. So
we can say leaky keg, though, can't we? Or did you have that on you? You put that on your thing?
Yeah, but see, did the keg really leak?
Well,
oh yeah, it did. The O-ring. That's right.
Yeah,
okay.
All right. It's self-dumped.
Okay. Well, I always count that as a leak. Call that a code brown in my family.
So you said you had. I'm going to finish the rest of this first beer from Scott. You said you had some disasters stories to share this year.
Yeah, mine go back. I don't even know where to start. I have so many.
Do the shortest one.
Well, I have to preface it by saying that I quit brewing for a year. So between the time I sold the store and not too long ago, I just didn't brew anymore. I just couldn't.
Right. Too busy.
Too busy. Lots of things going on. So I finally started brewing again, making some mead, making some beer, and realized that I had forgotten how to do some things. Now I don't mean that I forgot how to brew exactly, but you forget about all the little, the gadget that you need that you didn't remember, and then you're in the big middle of doing it. You don't have the gadget.
Plus, you've moved house and you got
Yeah.
rid of a lot of your gear.
Oh, I did. I gave away 2/3 of it. So yeah. So I have to preface with that. So I actually brought the beer. We're just going to drink some of it today. It was a dumper.
We should maybe drink it after the good beers.
I think we should drink it after the good beers. But so I noticed that I didn't see the word pellicle
Oh, no.
on the on the bingo card here.
We should put infection on there, or contamination, for
Yeah.
sure.
So my story is just that I brewed an elderberry mead, which came out lovely, beautiful, and this particular beer that I'm talking about on the same day. Well, I'll say 2 weeks into the fermentation of the mead, I noticed a pellicle, the beginnings of one. I went, oh no, that's not good. So I tasted it. It tasted fine, and I went ahead and treated it right then. I just checked, and the primary fermentation was done. So I was like, okay, this is got to kill this. Well, but then in the beer that I brewed the same day, there's a pellicle. So I got cross contamination. My theory
From the fruit?
My theory is it's from the fruit.
Yeah.
And I watched it for a few days, and I started frantically studying pellicles. I'd never had one before. I've been brewing for 25 years or more.
Wow.
Not once have I wouldn't even know what a pellicle was until.
So was it kind of dusty looking?
It was dusty and kind of moonscape looking.
Yeah.
But white.
The bubbles kind of stay for a while.
Yeah, but it wasn't mold. I mean, it wasn't moldy looking, and etc. So came time to I need to bottle this or throw it out, do something with it. And I tasted it and I was like, I don't know, because pellicles can be a lucky accident.
Yeah, sometimes it's good.
Sometimes. So I ended up bottling. I'd saved 2 bottles, one of which I brought today. We're going to drink it. We're going to at least smell it.
Let me send you outside to open that. It's in a Grolsch bottle. That swing top.
Well, it's ice cold.
So
Anyway.
so we're drinking the second beer from Scott, and it is the dry hopped version of the first beer that we drank. And so here's Scott with the description of beer number 2.
Hi, Scott again. Now you've got the actual Savvy Blanket IPA. It was based on Sauvignon Blanc, the wine, and I'm trying to just use that as my inspiration. And this is the 3rd iteration that I'm working on. Try a little something different every time. So same yeast, same brewing, same hot side hops, but the grain bill was about 71% Brice Brewer's malt. I have about 13% flaked wheat. I used Carapils this time, 6%. I had some rolled oats, so I used those, 6%. And I've started using acidulated malt to get my acidity for the mash, and that's at about 3.5%. And then what's different from the other IPA you tasted is this one has 9 ounces of hops in the dry hop for a 5-gallon batch. So that's 3 ounces each of Hallertau Blanc, Nelson Sauvin, and Vic Secret. And that was in there for about 4 days before a cold crash. Both of them had the same water treatments, I didn't say before. But the sulfates were at about 100 and the chlorides about 150. Just from different things that I've learned from books and different things to try.
It's also good.
Yeah, I like it a bunch.
I think I like the first one better.
I'm not sure. The first one seemed a little bit more fruity, a little bit, it had a little bit more mouthfeel, and I felt like was a bit sweeter in its finish, and I liked that about the beer. Having said that, I think this is delicious beer.
Yeah, it's good.
It's a really good beer.
Yeah, I'd buy both of them.
Yeah,
and
they're
be
both
happy.
commercial grade.
This is more of a. I would say the first one is more juicy, and this one is more of a traditional IPA kind of level of bitterness.
Yeah.
I think the dry hopping added. They say, 0 IBUs for dry hopping, but that's not true.
Right. No, it's not.
So there's a level of it increased the kind of hop bite in this beer. Mm-hmm. Ooh, I just burped and tasted really good. That's a good hop burp. No, I would gladly purchase either one of these and be completely happy. It's just side by side. I kind of like the first one better.
The first one was a little more unique, I guess. In other words, I feel like I've had this beer, a lot of times. A lot of different breweries are essentially making this beer in terms of just how it hits me and its overall hop character, etc. Which is not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
No, especially for a home brewer to say this tastes like a good commercial beer.
but the first iteration of this was unique.
Yeah,
It was like, I've really never had quite that beer before, and that's a rare thing these days with me.
Yeah. I still wouldn't call this hazy. It's not completely clear, but it may be a little bit more hazy than the first one, but nothing to complain about. I think it's really good.
Super good. What's our new disaster?
The next
disaster.
story, Tom from New Jersey. Says, after trying a few rye lagers, I planned on making one myself on my fairly new DIY electric system. On the eve of brew day, I took my 8-gallon spigoted pot and a large pasta pot to weigh out my water while my wife I slipped down south there for a minute.
You moved all the way to Texarkana, and you ain't getting back.
You went back home to Hot Springs. I've been hanging out with my family too much lately. To weigh out my water while my wife took my daughter shopping. After they got home, I cooked dinner and told her to leave the pots of water alone because it was for my beer. I happened to be making pasta, but during the dog days of summer, I started using a large fry pan to cook pasta. As tradition holds, when I cook, she cleans and vice versa. After coming back to the kitchen, I realized she had dumped the water from the pasta pot I had collected for my beer. Can you believe that she thought the water in the pasta pot was for pasta? No big deal. I'll weigh it back out in the morning. I took my kettle out, dumped the water I had left over from my spigoted pot into the kettle, and began to weigh what water I had from the night before. I brought the pot back to the kitchen and turned the water on. Figured now would be a good time to crush my malt. I took a minute to get away from the loud milling process to check on the weight of my water. As I approached my kitchen, I started to hear something unexpected, and I saw water all over the floor. You guessed it, my spigot was left open from when I moved the water into the kettle. A couple of towels later, I was all set. My mash temp was uneventful as I turned up my elements to boil the wort. At some point, I noticed that the wort started smelling odd, but I just chalked that up to the use of rye in the beer, as it's been some time since I used that much in a beer. Remember, I was making a lager, so I wanted to get my wort down to a pretty cool temperature to pitch. I decided to deploy the old water pump cooler technique with some ice to get the wort cooler, as my groundwater was too warm, so recirculating ice water in through the wort. I collected my water into the cooler with ice, and I went to turn off my hose. I turned around to see all the water from the cooler on the ground because the plug of the cooler came out. I plugged it in and realized that the plug just wouldn't work. I brought out another cooler and got the temperature down to a reasonable level and began to pump my beer into the fermenter. As my kettle was draining, I saw my heat elements. Each one looked like a long, campfire charred marshmallow log. Now that gave me some concern. I tasted the wort. It was a little smoky, but after the day I was already having, I decided to ferment the wort. Of course, the stir bar from my flask dumped into the beer, and the small silver magnet I had holding the stir bar fell into the silver abyss of my chest freezer. Okay, fine. Now it was time to clean this kettle. 3 45-minute long PBW washes got off some of the gunk, but not all of it. On my last run of rinse, I tossed my hose nozzle on the ground, and it fell on the ground and shot water right between my legs. I stood there for a few seconds with the water shooting me from behind and thought, what a day. It turned from a brew day into a bee day. I won't bore you with the additional cleanings with PBW and Barkeeper's Friend and my eventful choice to buy 2 new heat sticks. Maybe, just maybe, the beer, fermented beer with taste salvageable. Nope. Tasted like cigarettes, says Tom from New Jersey.
But did he dump them?
I don't know.
He doesn't say.
Well, one would infer that he dumped the cigarette beer, but, maybe he just paired it with a martini or something. But, man, I've heard tell of people brewing with rye and getting some heating elements with some sort of coating or something on the residue on the heating elements. I've never had that experience with my brew in a bag system from High Gravity in Tulsa. But I can tell you that when the cleanest my Blickman boil coil has been after I did a kettle sour, and then put the sour wort. My Christmas kettle sour. Yeah. I put I boiled that sour wort in there, and afterwards my heating element was just sparkling.
I bet
from the acidity.
You didn't have to use Bonhami.
No.
Attaboy, Luther.
Taro, Solomon. Obscure.
Uh-oh.
Did you do
number 14?
Did you put that?
I didn't mean to do that. It just
we can't help it.
Can't be helped.
So, did you get another mark from that?
Yeah,
story?
I got a helpful spouse.
Oh,
because his spouse was definitely helping him.
Well, but she dumped the pasta water.
That's helpful.
Is it?
Well,
it's a loose definition.
I interpret helpful spouse as
not getting angry.
Well, I read between the lines. One man's helpful is another man's please go away.
That's right. It's helpful. He's still brewing, so that's helpful.
That's helpful.
At the end of the year, we tend to look back on what we're grateful for, and we're extremely grateful for the support from our sponsors, including our friends Desiree and Dave from High Gravity in Tulsa. Desiree and Dave have been with us for a very long time, and I'm also grateful to you for supporting HighGravityBrew.com with your purchases of awesome Warthog electric brewing gear and for purchasing kits and ingredients through the excellent Build Your Own Beer page on HighGravityBrew.com. If you don't have a local homebrew shop nearby, or if you purchase your ingredients and equipment online, I hope you're throwing support to Desiree and Dave. They are truly family-owned and operated, and Dave builds the Warthog systems right there in the back of the shop. So if you have a question or even an issue with your system, you can get personal support from the source. I love my Warthog brew-in-a-bag system, and Steve loves his too. It's certainly taken the pain out of propane. Head on over to HighGravityBrew.com and use the code EBC75BB to save $75 off your Warthog electric gear purchase and show your gratitude for the support that Desiree and Dave continue to give to this show. That's at HighGravityBrew.com. That's HighGravityBrew.com. It's a tasty beverage. Dan.
And I would like to hear from, if we have any, from our female.
Well, they don't have disasters.
They've got helpful spouses, and that's a disaster all on its own.
Helpful quotation mark.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The fact that we rarely hear from female brewers on disasters is telling, I think. Dan from Cumberland, Rhode Island. Dan says, "Hi, James. I'm a member of the Rhode Island Brewing Society, or RIBS." Ooh, getting hungry. Yeah. I've been listening to your show for a long time. I had the pleasure of meeting and talking to you at HomebrewCon in Providence, Rhode Island, in the before times, before COVID, that is. This brewing disaster happened to me about 10 years ago in my old house in Malden, Massachusetts, about 6 miles outside of Boston. And I thought I'd share it with you, so here it goes. Dan says, I was a new father of twins. Having been brewing for several years at this point, I was pretty comfortable with my brewing process. Oh, he's flying too close to the sun there. Mm-hmm. I had my brew night planned out ahead of time. Bedtime in those days was directly proportionate to strike water temperature. Tubs were given, I take that to mean baths, while the strike water was heating. I could have the kids clean, dried off, and in pajamas before the water was up to mash temperature. I would put the kids into their cribs, run down to dough in, and be able to run back up and read them a story, possibly sing a song or two while they fell asleep before having to go back down and run off into the kettle. At this point, the babies would be asleep, and hopefully not me as well. With the baby monitor in hand, I would settle in to add some hops and finish up the boil. Then chill the wort and transfer to my glass carboy. I bet you're sensing where this is going, Dan says. Now, on this particular night, that's when everything went bad. By this time, it's 2 a.m. I'm brewing on the sidewalk in front of my house, in the city, houses on top of each other, in sandals. Foreshadowing. I was moving the full fermenter
Bingo.
back.
No, oh, no, damn. Excuse me.
I was moving the full fermenter back into the house when it slipped out of my wet hands. I watched in slow motion horror as it fell to the concrete sidewalk and promptly exploded right next to my feet. It sounded like a bomb going off. Glass shrapnel flew in every direction, a few pieces finding their way into the exposed skin on my legs and feet. I start to see neighbors' lights start to blink on, wondering what the heck is going on. I hobbled myself into the house, leaving a bloody trail behind me, blood. That's a thing.
There we go.
I sat down and removed all the glass from my wounds and found some butterfly stitches, Band-Aids, and gauze in my first aid kit. By the time I was finished patching myself up, the kitchen looked like a Dexter kill room. Sadly, I had to hobble back outside and clean up the carnage on the sidewalk, and at the very least pull all my brewing gear in off the sidewalk and throw it into a heap in the basement to be dealt with at a later time. Worst of all, I lost 5 gallons of wort. He lost 2 pints of blood, but he's more worried about the wort. That would have become a fabulously mediocre beer and 7 hours of my life, but luckily I still have all my toes. Needless to say, I will never brew in sandals or move a glass carboy that's not in a milk crate ever again. Thanks for reading my tale of woe. From Dan in Cumberland, Rhode Island. So, you marked more than one
Well, I realized
space.
that
You broke your rule there.
Yeah, because I realized that with my rule, I might not ever be able to win.
I'd say mark all the marks you can mark.
That's what I'm doing.
What'd you mark there? We
I
have broken
marked
carboy.
blood, and I marked, it was late night.
Oh, okay. And there's broken glass in there, too.
I didn't, but that's not in my...
Oh, you didn't put the... I love the sound of broken glass. Okay. Now this was not sent in as a disaster story. It was sent in as a request for help. But
Which could lead to a disaster if I'm involved.
but I said that I was going to submit it for a disaster. This is Ray in Canada.
You can call me Ray.
You can call me Jay, or you can call me Johnny. So you can mark that space twice, the obscure cultural reference.
Yeah, I already got them.
So the subject of the email is Naked Stout Help.
Okay.
Ray says, I've been an avid fan for 2 years now. I grew up winemaking and homebrewing with my dad during the beginning of the COVID pandemic. Took up homebrewing again. I grew up winemaking and homebrewing with my dad, and during the beginning of the COVID pandemic, took up homebrewing again. I bought some used equipment from a local homebrewer, and he recommended your podcast as a way to learn and enjoy the hobby. I'm so happy that he did. Well, thanks, Ray.
Yeah.
I listen nearly every week, and have gone back several years in your archive as well. But I need some help. My wife and I, along with our kids, decided we want to bring back the old school Christmas party. not quite Griswold style, and I thought I'd make 3 corny kegs of beer to help keep costs down. I made a staple, Razor's Amber. Blondes have more fun, and what I'd planned to be my chocolate oatmeal stout. I'd drink at that party. I had a very busy period at work, so I emailed my homebrew shop with my grain bills, but somehow cut off a portion of the stout recipe. So this is my first major so-called disaster in 2 years, but I don't know how to help the beer along, and I also don't have time to brew another. So, here's what happened, Ray says. I had time to brew on a Friday after work, so I picked up my grains at the shop and came home to brew. I'd planned to get a bunch of stuff done for work while I was brewing, so needless to say, I was distracted. I started my water, mashed in, and then like 30 minutes later, realized the color of my stout was off. It was blonde. I thought, did the homebrew shop screw up? They must have. So I looked at the order, and I forgot both the roasted barley and the chocolate malt. So hard to brew a dark beer when you don't have your dark grains. Okay, so I'm going to continue this beer for now. I usually mash out at 76 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes. Forgot. I usually add Whirlflock tablet at 15 minutes. Forgot. It's okay. Those 2 are fine.
Yeah, those 2 are fine.
I decide, fine, I will keep going anyway. Go to pitch yeast, realize I forgot to order SO4. All I had was Mangrove Jack M36 Liberty Bell. Okay, pitch anyway.
Yeah,
fine.
Yeah.
Everything's fine, except for the color of the beer.
yeah.
Ray says, I kegged the beer tonight, and it's totally fine. It just doesn't have much flavor. So I've been listening to a few of your episodes about tinctures. Do you or Steve have an idea what to do? I was thinking about soaking some whiskey barrel chips in vodka, then adding to the keg. Just don't know how much. Any help would be amazing. Take care. And he says, happy Thanksgiving over the border. I don't know. They have their Thanksgiving at a different time.
Yes, they do.
So, Ray, what advice do you have to Ray on... I was thinking, he's talking about doing a tincture with wood. You could do that. Mm-hmm. Could he, it depends on where the beer is. If it's still in the fermenter, theoretically, he could do he could steep some, of course, this is a long time ago, but he could theoretically, if it's still in the fermenter, he could steep some specialty grains in some hot water, add that to the beer, and then that's in a way adding a grain tincture. Mm-hmm. You'd have to let that kind of ferment out, or let that kind of stabilize. But certainly you could add, some oak tincture to the beer. As far as how much, you're just gonna have to experiment.
Yeah, my advice was hearkening back to the great Homer Simpson. Never try. That was pretty much what I had. But with that in mind. You could also, if you got a beer like that, and I don't know what the rest of the grain bill was, but I'm assuming it's pale malt and, 5, 6, 7% beer, something like that. So, again, I don't know if you want to go in the direction of the oak, or if you want to go in the direction of some kind of dry hop. I had good luck in a beer that was another disaster story in a way. But I kind of saved it because one of the things I didn't like about it was my hops. I had calculated the hops and got the beer done, and it just wasn't the beer that I was expecting. And hops were part of it. Well, at bottling, I hit it with 1 milliliter of El Dorado hop oil, and it saved the beer, in my opinion. It turned it from kind of it's an okay APA that was supposed to have been a big IPA, but I think the grain bill got screwed up. Neither here nor there. And so
similar
in that way, but I went. So what this needs is a big, not a lot of bitterness, but it needs a hop punch,
some character.
And so I hit it with that hop oil, and it's great.
Yeah,
and I don't have to tell anybody that it was not the beer it was supposed to be.
You could also, even if it's in the keg, you could get some fruit puree.
Exactly,
like I've done with several brews this past year. And you could put fruit puree. I have to slow down when I say that. It's hard to say, especially after half a beer. Put some fruit puree in the keg, and the first pint or two will be full of fruit slurry. But after that, then you'll have this
Yeah.
beautiful fresh fruit flavor because it's not fermented.
Yeah.
Now you got to keep in mind you don't want to give a growler to a friend of yours to take home, because
Or send off to
or send it off to
Overcon.
competition.
Yeah.
yeah, because it's going to blow up probably. But yeah, there's several ways to fix a beer after it's
especially if you're left with a base beer that's still a perfectly good beer. It's just not what you wanted,
Right.
Or it's not perfectly good because, again, in my case, I thought the hops weren't right for what I expected, and then. And there are definitely workarounds. And then you can always just start off by drinking a lot of really good beer and then
save that for last. But they were brewing for a Christmas party or for a party, so you could do a tincture bar.
Yep. Oh.
You could have this base beer, and then you could have a bunch of tinctures lined up and with a little squirty thing in each of them.
Yeah.
And say you can make your own beer. You could put some fruit in one tincture and some spices in another tincture and wood in another if you want to add oak.
Yep.
Some peppers. You could have, and then you have a contest maybe of who comes up with the best tincture combination to make that beer the best.
Well, ho, ho, ho.
Doesn't that sound fun?
That does sound fun.
Okay, we have our third beer. This is again from Scott, and here's what we're about to drink.
Hi, this is Scott again, and the next beer you're trying is a flambic, which is, I'm in Florida, so it's my lambic style. I've been doing Solera for a few years, and this one I took an oak stick and I soaked it in Sauvignon Blanc, and then I put it in the beer. So currently that beer is right about 2 years old. And it's about a little over 5%. And I used Y yeast 3278 and some dregs when I started the Solera project. And then that is about 65% Pilsner malt and 35% flaked wheat. In that one, I used German Hallertau hops. It had about a 4.5 alpha acids. I thought it came out real nice.
Yeah. What do you think?
I love this beer a lot.
It's really good.
It's really, really good.
It's been a while since I've had a really good, mature sour beer.
Me too. Yeah. And my first sip was, whoa, that's sour. Because I haven't, my palate wasn't even expecting it in a way. But after the second or third sip, I'm pretty darn happy. This is a delightful beer.
The nose is really good. It smells like Brett to me, and a bit of wood. It smells really good, but then the flavor is really good as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes these sour beers, especially homebrewed ones, can taste pretty good, but they got a little funk in the nose. It's just like, I don't know if I want to go any further than this.
Yeah. I've brewed a couple of those.
Well, who hasn't? But this both smells and tastes good and looks good. It's a pretty beer.
There's one that I used to, in the beginning I nicknamed it Old Feet because old shower drain. But it matured out. This is really good.
Yeah.
I may save. I don't know that I'll drink all of my half the sample right now because I gotta talk, and it's so tart that it's it's making me salivate.
Boy, it is.
I don't want to spit all over my. This reminds me of a story. Recently, we were over at a friend's house, and usually the friend only has Michelob Ultra on offer. And so there was beer in the bucket there, and it was Michelob Ultra, so I got one. And he says, I got more beer out in the fridge in the garage, and he brings back a 4-pack from New Glarus.
Oh, my.
It's got Spotted Cow and Raspberry Tart in 12-ounce bottles, 2 of each. And I
Wow.
said, what? They were laughing at me
Did you
because
do your sexy dance?
I was like, holy crap, where did you get that? In fact, I sent you a picture of that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. Number one, I've never seen, they were laughing at me because I was so excited. Because I've never seen Raspberry Tart in a 12-ounce bottle. And then there's Spotted Cow, which is this cream ale from New Glarus. It's just amazing. So I finished. I downed the rest of my Michelob Ultra, and I
would have called that a dumper.
and I got a Spotted Cow, and somebody else got one of the. I said, "Oh, now they stand in line for this at the Great American Beer Festival."
I'd be like, "This isn't good."
Yeah, exactly. I should have taken it. I should have taken the rest of them, but another friend of ours got one, and she I noticed that she poured it in a glass, the raspberry tart, and I noticed that a few minutes later there wasn't much sipped out of her glass, and so it was a bit too tart for her. I mean, she has an open mind. She tried it. It was a bit too much for her, a bit too much, too tart. So unfortunately, that one kind of, But that's
dumpster dived.
Can I drink the rest of that?
Are you going to drink that? You going to eat them fries? You going to drink that beer?
Some mustard on it. So anyway, that was a pleasant surprise, and I should have stolen both of those raspberry tarts. I don't think anybody would have noticed, but I did get the Spotted Cow, and it was delicious.
One of the best beers.
All right.
I got into it with a customer. We didn't a fight.
Uh-oh.
But a guy came in and he wanted a Spotted Cow clone.
Oh.
So I made him one. Did a little research and did the best I could to make him something close, and told him it was one of the best cream ales out there. And he got mad at me because he told me it was not a cream ale.
Oh. Is my understanding that it was?
It is a cream ale.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you go on their website, they call it a cream. But he had in his mind it was something else, and I didn't argue with him. I'm like, well, okay, maybe maybe I don't know, but it's a cream ale. And whoever you are out there, nanny, nanny, nanny.
Mark from Milton, Florida, writes the following is a brewing disaster for your consideration. 23rd of May, 2022.
That sets the stage.
That's a date of significance.
Yes.
In our family. Someone in my family, that's their birthday. Mark says, I brew with a Warthog 240-volt electric brew-in-a-bag system with a 15-gallon spike brew pot. Wow, fancy. That has taken the pain out of propane. I usually end up with two 4.5-gallon batches split into two 5-gallon buckets. One of the nice things about brewing this way is that I can use different yeasts, dry hop schedules, etc., to each batch and compare the results. Very smart, Mark.
Yes.
I normally brew first thing in the morning, but on this day I had other things to do in the morning, 5 a.m. Consequently, my brew day began around 11 a.m. I found that brew in a bag works well for me. I've been brewing since about 2012, and while some of those brews had their share of mishaps, it was nothing like the experience I'm about to share with you. I chose to brew a clone of Russian River's Blind Pig IPA.
Nice beer.
This brew has 29 pounds of grain, which is more than I've ever used on this system. Foreshadowing. Unfortunately, I did not notice this minor detail in the problems such a large grain bill would cause. This brewing disaster day, like many I've heard on your podcast, has multiple disasters. Mark says, like any brew day, it starts with filling the pot with about 12 gallons of water. The Warthog does a great job of heating the water and maintaining the temperature. What could possibly go wrong here? I added about a third of the grain before I realized I forgot to put the bag in.
Oh.
I've done that. I drained the water and scooped out the grain and cleaned the pot. I then added the water and grain, programmed the Warthog to the appropriate temperature and started to mash in. The mash is now on autopilot. Once the mash is over, I would raise the temperature of the Warthog and perform a mash out, which you can do with this. You just dial it up. Mm-hmm. I forgot to do that too, but maybe that was meant to be. I use a hand crank winch to remove the grains. There's a metal loop screwed on a 2x4 that is attached to the exposed floor joists above.
I use a bar winch, but there are no metal clamps involved.
Gotta leave that alone. The winch cable goes through the metal loop. Once the brew in a bag loops are placed through the hook, all I have to do is crank the bag out of the pot. Mm-hmm. The previously mentioned grain bill, size, and weight now comes into play. You can probably guess what's going to happen. While I was removing the bag, which is about halfway out of the pot, the metal loop failed, and the grain bag fell back into the pot, splashing hot wort on my hand.
Oh, gosh.
Which caused a minor burn. Fortunately, the amount of wort loss was minimal. So again, the injury is secondary to the
always
consequences of the brew. The rest of the brew, boil and cooling, went in a normal and safe manner. The split batches fermented normally. At the time of this writing, I'm dry hopping and will eventually go into a keg. All in all, a bad brewing day is better than a good day at work.
Unless you're a professional brewer.
Well, yeah. Then you're splitting the baby.
You're kind of screwed.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Again, I don't. Now I'm in a situation now where I have a covered patio, and I could, and in fact I should rig up a pulley system.
Yep.
And most of the time I do 5-gallon batches. Because one reason is I don't like to do 10-gallon batches because then I got to drink 10 gallons worth of that beer before I go on to the next batch.
Right.
But then also that's heavy, that wet grain. Mm-hmm. So now I can actually, but thanks to Mark, I'm gonna make sure I have a strong enough hook to put in the in above it.
Yeah.
There you go. Were you able to knock
Not
off
one?
Any? Not a one. Walker from Seattle. I've been a cider brewer for years, but in January 2021, I decided to start my first mead. This is up your alley. Up your alley, Steve. It got off to a good start, and I was planning to bottle it around the end of the year. But then my wife got pregnant with our first baby, and we were painting our house, so I never got around to it. Flash forward to July of 2022. I'm on parental leave, and we finally have the baby sleeping well enough that I have time for hobbies again. There were some off smells coming from the brewing fridge, so I figured the mead had gone bad, but I decided I should try it before dumping it out. One afternoon, my wife and a friend took all the kids out for a walk, so I had the house to myself for a whole hour. I sterilized my gear and pulled the carboy of mead out of the brewing fridge in the garage. I drew a sample, and it was tasty, so even though it smelled bad. I saved the rest of the sample in a glass and put it in the fridge upstairs. By this point, my hour is running out, so I start putting everything away with a plan to bottle the mead the following day. My wife, her friend, and all 3 kids get home just as I'm about to put the mead back in the brewing fridge. This is the first time I've used my 5-gallon glass carboy, and I pick it up by the neck while my hands are still a little wet. Foreshadowing. I can tell I don't have a good grip, but I only need to move it about 2 feet to get into the fridge. Right as I'm crossing the lip of the fridge, it slips from my hands and drops a mere 2 inches. But that's enough for it to shatter and spill 5 gallons of mead all over our small Seattle garage. And of course, I was barefoot.
Oh, Lord.
The shattering carboy makes a loud noise, so of course the kids come to investigate and find a sticky floor covered in glass shards. Just as one of the kids is stepping into the garage, my wife's friend appears and gets the kids out of there. Then my wife helped me get the glass off my feet so I could put sandals on. He didn't even have sandals on at this point. And go get bandages for all the cuts. It took several hours to clean up all the glass, pull everything out of the garage, wash the mead off the floor, let it dry, and then move everything back in. But by the end of the day, the garage was cleaner than it's ever been since we've moved in. And that night, I sat on the couch and had the only 2 ounces of the mead that I managed to save.
Oh, my.
I decided to start another batch a couple weeks later, but this time I'm using a plastic carboy, and I made sure to buy straps for it so I can always pick it up safely. Walker from Seattle, Washington.
It's a very O. Henry-esque story.
All he had was
just the 2 ounces.
He had a comb but no hair, or something like that.
Something like that. That's pretty much how I am today.
Maybe we should have another beer.
I think that would be a grand idea.
Okay, I'm going to set my.
Mine.
I assume you want another glass because that's a sour beer.
That's a sour beer.
Now, there's the 4th and final beer from Scott, and here's what it is.
Hi, this is Scott again. You're now about to try my hot pepper beer. It's from a Scotch bonnet extract that I had made, and also a few different small batches that I had made, mostly with the Philly sour yeast. I just wasn't very happy with all of them. They were fine. They just weren't very exciting. So I put them together. I tried adding hibiscus. I tried some blueberries. I tried ginger, all in small amounts. Just didn't do it for me. And then I added the Scotch bonnet extract that I made and a little bit more lactic acid. And suddenly I had a 5% beer that I really liked. If I was going to try to reproduce it, I would probably make about a 5% slightly tart sour. And I would make myself a habanero or Scotch bonnet extract and then just dose it to taste. And then if I wanted a little more complexity, I would try some ginger and some hibiscus. Got it a little bit of color, and I think it added just a little bit. And I got a lot of great reviews on that from friends.
It's a pretty beer. Mm-hmm. Again, it's got blueberry, ginger, hibiscus, and some Scotch bonnet extract or tincture. Cheers, by the way. I don't
Cheers.
think we've clunk.
It smells fruity.
The sound effect of the doggy door in the background when we tapped our cups together. It smells like I smell the blueberry, I think.
That's really good. I was thinking it was going to be.
I was afraid of it because on the cap it has a picture of what looks like a habanero, but it's a Scotch bonnet.
I think biologically, I think they're the same thing.
Are they?
I'm not sure. I'm sure if I need to be corrected, I'm sure someone will. But I think that the Scotch bonnet's definitely grown, in the Caribbean as opposed to Yucatan. But that beer has such an interesting flavor. It's not too hot, but it's definitely got some nice heat.
But it's all in the. It's not. Woo. It's warming up.
Is it familiar?
It tastes familiar. That's another cultural reference. That's good. I taste the fruit.
I do too, and I like the fruit. I was afraid that it was such a mishmash that it was just going to be kind of nondescript. I don't know what, but It's actually very pleasant. The fruitiness is it's not out of hand, and it's not muddy.
No, not at all. That's good.
Yeah.
And it's got enough heat. It's not an intimidating amount of heat. But the fruit is nice and very drinkable.
Very drinkable.
Yeah, I wanted to have it last in the series of good beers because I was afraid that it was going to blow our palates out.
Not at all.
But it's good. It's nicely balanced.
Yeah, that's a really nice amount of heat. Just enough.
See, that's another example of taking a beer that you think is mediocre and salvaging it. It's lagering weather around here, and our friends and sponsors at Imperial Organic Yeast have you covered with L25 Hygge, spelled Hygge. Hygge is a Northern European lager yeast famously used in Pilsner-style beers that complements significant hop additions, clean and crisp with a very light sulfur profile. That sounds delicious. I've got 3 packages in hand, well, not right now, but in the fridge, of L25 Hygge, and I'm planning to give one to Steve and use the other 2 to fill my empty kegs. And since my kegerator is empty as well, I can use it to set up the perfect lagering temperature, to be a perfect lagering chamber. We love Imperial Organic Yeast with 200 billion cells in each easy-to-open package. I like to say my stir plate is dusty because I don't use it anymore for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches, and my airlocks are usually bubbling before bedtime. Ask your local homebrew store about Imperial Organic Yeast and L25 Hygge, and check them out, as always, at imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. This is Asaf from Israel. Being a homebrewer of 13 years, I've had my share of disasters: overflowing lautering bucket, exploding bottles, electrical smoke, rancid batches, hot wort, and a tempered glass container. But recently I managed to go go beyond that and instantly made me think of your disaster special. See, that's the thing is nowadays, when people have a disaster, they think of us.
Well, that's my motto. Have a disaster? Think of me.
Asaf says, I was asked by my niece to brew 40 liters of a nice classic Hefeweizen for her wedding in keg form. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Having only one corny, I borrowed another from a friend. Shout out to Aaron. And went through the process of brewing and fermenting. As I recently moved house, I thought my issues will be with my new small and used fermenting fridge. Little did I know. Bottling/kegging day went reasonably well. A few keg sealing issues that got overcome with some keg lube.
Keg lube.
And fidgeting
Never
around.
say that.
And fidgeting around with the lids. A week later, I put both kegs in the trunk as I was planning a drive the next day to her neck of the woods and dropped the beer off pre-wedding. As I opened the car the next day to start the drive, the smell of bready sweet yeast hit me. I promptly felt the kegs around and looked at the tops, finding no moisture whatsoever. However, feeling the wet trunk floor, it was clear I had a spillage. When I checked the pressure release valves, I saw that the borrowed keg had no more pressure. I spent the next 1.5 hours driving and thinking what happened. Maybe something pushed the outpost and a few pints went out as much as pressure allowed it, or perhaps the keg was not completely upright. The pressure release let out some beer. When I arrived, I immediately took the keg out and noticed a light spray coloring the floor wherever the keg moved. The keg had a crack in the bottom. I put the keg on its head and got the job doing damage assessment of the trunk. Let's say that luckily the spare tire sits low in the trunk on a solid metal floor. I lost 13 liters, about 3 gallons, to the many absorbing parts that make up my trunk.
Oh.
And have been washing them all and driving and parking with the windows open for a week, trying to get that lovely banana scent out before it goes sour. Epilogue, I salvaged the rest of the flat beer into growlers, and between that and the other keg, my beer was enjoyed by family and friends. Well, that's good.
Oh.
Side disaster, if we're already on the subject, so we get a bonus. A few years back, I was working in a craft pub where we also made our own cold brew nitro coffee. I was asked to teach a new employee, the owner's son-in-law, how to make it, and so we did a batch together, opening the barrel, cleaning, brewing, pressurizing, and all. A few weeks later, when another batch was due, he was charged with doing it. I asked him if he feels okay with it and told him to come to me with any questions he might have in the process. A few minutes later, I heard a bang, and when I turned, I saw him standing in a puff of smoky vapor, holding his mouth. It seems that he forgot to depressurize the barrel before opening the top, and so as he unscrewed it, the top just flew, colliding with his face on the way up.
Oh, Lord.
Luckily, it ended with nothing more than a chipped tooth, but it was mere inches from disaster. Wow. Thanks, Asaf. That was... So, I can identify with the smell of stale odor in a car because when I was in college, a friend of mine was adopting a dog from the local animal shelter, and so I had a car. She did not. It was a Ford Escort. We put the back seats down, drove, got the dog, a kind of a medium-sized dog, and on the way back it was in the middle of summer, and driving the dog back from the animal shelter, she turned around and started laughing. And I said, what's the deal? And she said, she didn't say pooping, but she's pooping on your tennis racket. And so the dog was relieving herself in the back of my car. And it took a while to get that smell out of my car. And I tell you, Lysol does not help.
No.
It just smells like old nasty dog, and they don't feed the dogs at the animal shelter the best food.
No.
So
it's a mess.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I can top that.
Uh-oh.
So I'm out in the middle of Kansas, and I decided to go fishing. So I buy 24 crawdads, and I put them in they're live, and they're in a little bucket, to use as bait.
Uh-huh.
Oh, the bucket tipped over in my car as I'm going down the highway.
Oh.
I only found about half of them. That's the end of the story. Do with it what you will. It was in the summer.
Oh.
Okay.
Nice. Smell of crawdads.
Ooh.
Okay. My name is Mark, and I'm writing to you from Sweden. I'm a huge fan of the show. I began listening to your podcast back in 2017, starting from the very first episode in the archives. Woo.
Ooh.
I quickly got caught up to the... Boy, I don't know about quickly, but I quickly caught up to the current episodes, listening to episodes during my commute, on runs, on flights around Europe. When I started listening to your show, I had nary 10 brews under my belt. Now, as I near 100 brews, I can honestly say that at least half of what I learned about homebrewing is a direct result of your show. Wow. Mark says, I listen at double speed most of the time, which makes Steve's quick and biting wit come across as nearly superhuman in speed.
I've heard that from my wife.
Thanks, Mark. All right.
Okay.
Mark says, home alone on parental leave with my first child. I decided to attempt a double bottling session during my daughter's first nap. I say double because my wife, who is at work, is pregnant with twins, and I've been brewing styles that I can make half of the batch into low-alcohol beer, around 0.5 to 2% alcohol. My 14-month-old daughter's first nap is usually 2 hours, so I know I will have to move quickly to pull this off, and that any misstep has the potential to bring about the special kind of disaster that only the combination of a small child and cold-side brewing can bring about. Today's bottling day comes with slightly higher stakes since this beer is named Champagne Supernova, an annual celebration beer that I brew in honor of the birth of my first child, whose name is Nova. She was born on my wife's birthday, so it really is a beer for both of them. This year's version is a beer/wine hybrid fermented with a Kveik strain. Wow, that sounds ambitious.
I was hoping his first child's name was going to be Champagne. I named my first kid Chardonnay. You don't live here, Chardonnay.
The development of the recipe for this beer took a considerable amount of planning to develop, so I really wanted it to turn out. The process starts out well, as they all do.
Of course.
I prepare the priming syrup in my brew pot that I also use for bottling. Enough for 3 volumes of CO2 for the whole batch. I then deftly transfer half of my batch into the pot without so much as nudging the yeast cake or free-floating the hops. And aside, I mistakenly ordered whole cones for this brew, making the racking of this beer a bit more delicate of an operation than normal. I swirl gently, then proceed to bottle this half of the batch. I check the time, T-minus 1 hour 15 minutes until Nova wakes up. I pat myself on the back for such quick bottling time and such clear beer. I then go to transfer the next half of the batch into the pot for bottling when it dawns on me. I dosed the first half of the beer with the priming sugar for the whole batch.
Oh, my.
I briefly consider leaving the first batch, thinking the bottles are rated for around 5 volume. Surely there must be a margin of error. Supernova would refer to the explosion that happens. Thankfully, I come to my senses and decide to carefully pour out each bottle back into the pot and combine with the remaining beer still in the fermenter. Yeah. With a great deal of cursing, I managed to transfer the bottled beer back to the pot without too much splashing or fear of oxidation. I then moved to transfer the remaining beer from the fermenter into the same pot. The transfer does not start out well. My racking cane quickly clogs with whole cones and requires a rinse and spray down of star sand before trying again. After many rounds of this and the required amount of cursing, mostly under my breath so as not to wake my daughter, I managed to transfer enough of the unprimed wort into the pot to bring my projected carbonation levels down to the 3+ zone. Shoo! I can see that a non-insignificant amount of hop debris has made it into my bottling pot, but convince myself that a quick whirlpool should collect the majority of it into the center of the pot. I check the time again, T-minus 45 minutes until Nova wakes. But I did hear her make a sound about 15 minutes into her nap, so I revised this to T-minus 1 hour. Now to bottle the first half for the second time. Bottling does not start out well. The hop debris that made it through the racking cane was once again passing through my siphon and getting stuck in the bottling wand. Oh, After filling 2 bottles with tortuously slow fill rate and a few debris dumps, I check the time again. T-minus 45 minutes. The ethanol boil-off phase of my low-alcohol batch alone takes 45 minutes, not to mention the time needed to bring the beer to 79C, cool it, and all of the remaining transferring and capping. At this point, I nearly considered giving up. I should also mention that we are in the middle of a move.
Oh, Lord.
Our moving date is just under a week away, and the house is not nearly as packed as it should be. While my wife is generally supportive of the hobby, even she has her limits. I genuinely assess the threat to my life if I tell her that absolutely no packing got done, but at least I neglected our daughter while I bottled some of the beer that might not turn out.
Can I go ahead and officially mark this as angry spouse?
Yes.
Okay.
I taste the hydrometer sample that I had poured earlier to see how guilty I would feel in dumping the whole batch. Please be terrible, I cry out to the heavens. To my chagrin, it's delicious. Taking inspiration from the Most Brewing Disasters show that I had recently listened to, I think, to heck with it. I'm halfway to a bingo. I might as well try to save the beer. Worst case scenario, I'll have a story for James and Steve. See? When things go bad, they think of us. Yep. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, I decided to remove the bottling wand and go old school, starting and stopping the flow by manually crimping the hose.
Oh, boy.
The beer begins to flow, this time with the occasional piece of hop debris finding its way into the bottle.
Extra protein.
Dry hopping in the bottle. After successfully bottling the first batch, I'm able to bring the second half to the boiling point of ethanol and hold it for 30 minutes. Remember, he's making low-alcohol beer. Mm-hmm. Driving off all the detectable vapors by way of the nose before bringing in Nova for her lunch. She enjoys the show of her dad bottling Mom's low-alcohol batch, while I revel in the fact that she has not yet learned to speak. So Mom has no way of finding out about this comedy of errors until she proofreads this story. Both versions of the beer turned out great, by the way. With careful pouring, one can keep all the hop debris behind and pour a remarkably clear beer. Okay, we have one last thing from Scott Housel, and it's a.
Am I just supposed to shoot this?
No, no.
It's one of those. It's in a little airline liquor bottle, by the way.
Yes,
just so
yes.
For a visual.
Yeah.
Only it has the word coconut written on it in graffiti style lettering.
Yeah, it looks like something I found on the road. No offense, Scott, but here's what's in there.
No, I like it. It looks more like what's on a Frontier airline. They just do homemade stuff.
Here we go.
So the coconut extract you have, I took toasted coconut. I didn't do it myself. It was the first time. I just wanted to give it a shot. I took some nice rum, lower to mid-level, soaked it. It's probably about 2 months, and I don't know if you get the rum anymore. It just smells like coconut, tastes like coconut. Put drops in whatever you want and see what you think.
So this is a rum coconut extract.
Oh.
And yeah, it smells great.
It smells like coconut.
Yeah. And I developed an allergy to rum in college. What I did I've got this holiday beer that I made with Chris Colby's recipe from that one recipe development show. It's still not way carbonated.
Yeah, it needs a little bit more fizz, but it's really delicious.
Oh, that's good. And that's got oak and vanilla and cinnamon extract or tincture in it. Oh, it's very dark and malty.
That's nice beer.
You want to dose this some of the coconut?
So I've had
extract?
it, and I'm going to agree that it's chocolatey. There's vanilla. Mm-hmm. It's a very complex tasting beer. It's not a stout.
No.
It looks like a stout. It walks like a stout. It quacks like a stout.
It's like 9% alcohol.
But it's definitely not.
Ooh.
I don't know if this is too much or not. How much is that?
That's about 2.5 milliliters of the extract. Woo! And it goes.
I went heavy.
I wonder if I should have, I think I should have dosed this beer with more yeast at bottling time. Because I used Pub from Imperial, which is an English ale yeast, and it flocculated hard.
Oh, yeah, that stuff's...
And so eventually it'll carbonate, but...
I actually had some professional brewers, truly, these are commercial brewers who bought pub from me to make a starter to pitch into their barrels of beer.
Right.
They made the starter. It flocculated so hard, they returned it and said it didn't work.
Did they not check the gravity?
No, because they're not very good commercial brewers. And I'm standing looking at the guy going, look at all that. Look at the yeast cake at the bottom there.
So it was just a starter that it wasn't a full batch.
No. It was just the starter.
So he looked at the starter and it said it didn't work because it's all in the bottom.
And it was so clear.
Did he not notice that it was like a lot more yeast than he put in there?
I say these are not
good professional brewers.
These were not the sharpest tools in the shed.
Well, I think they would find if they took a gravity of the
be
beer sitting on top of
professional thing to do. But I just
this worked too fast.
It worked too fast and too good.
Or this didn't work. It went through that starter in such a hurry that they thought it didn't work.
Couldn't have worked.
Okay, so
but enough about me.
So here's the coconut.
Oh. It made it different. I don't know if it's better or not, but now it's coconutty.
Yeah,
and that's
good.
Really good. I like coconut.
That's real good,
and it works well in this style of beer.
Yeah, success. And the good thing is, I don't taste the rum.
No, I don't taste any rum,
which is good. Because again,
are you allergic to rum?
I have an allergy. I have a rum allergy.
I'm allergic to Jack Daniels in much the same way.
Okay. Michael from Overland Park, Kansas. We're down to the last two letters. Michael from Overland Park, Kansas. I've been brewing for about 3 years now. Pretty green by most standards, which is what I was after I had that rum.
That's right. By most standards.
Green around the gills. But I've put together a few pretty good beers. With plenty of COVID downtime, I put together my own electric brew-in-a-bag system. Though I've had enough brewing mishaps to cause my wife to dread brew day, I've never had anything disaster-worthy until this year. With 4 kids under age 6, Michael, and a new job as an associate at a large law firm. Oh, congratulations. We may need to call you sometime. Yes. My brewing time was restrained. It was hard to find time to put in a full 5-gallon all-grain batch, even with abbreviated boil schedules. But the day my birthday rolled around, I knew I had a free pass to spend the afternoon on a good old-fashioned brew day. And what better recipe to celebrate the ever-accelerating passage of time and my ever-decelerating metabolism, boy, I can agree with or identify with all that, than James Spencer's Rye Wit. Oh, that was a good beer. That was made with rye and wheat malt, nothing else,
right,
and like 2% alcohol. The way I did it. I'd been excited to try this recipe for months, and the brew day was going off without a hitch. The mash went perfectly, and I was starting to bring the wort up to a boil. I began connecting hoses to my wort chiller, which was attached to the little platform brewing stand I put together. In retrospect, I think I may have been a little aggressive as I tried to unkink the hose, because as I attempted to straighten the hose, the whole kettle fell. The kettle tipped and slammed into the patio, leaving a nice dent in the stainless steel, and approximately 4 pounds of grain and 7 gallons of water now decorated the patio. Happy birthday to me. So that's one advantage to brewing a low-gravity batch of beer. With you
don't lose that much.
When you spill it all over the patio. Michael says, I will say this story has a happy ending. Recalling that I had 2 jugs of expired liquid malt extract that the local homebrew store had given away for free, I recalled yet another basic brewing recipe, the 15-minute extract saison. I hadn't lost any hops in the spill and was ultimately able to get a 5-gallon batch done within the time it would have taken me to finish the original beer. So as far as disasters go, not too bad. I still ended up with beer, and the only casualties were about $8 worth of grain, a dent to my kettle, and a deserved blow to the ego. And one more brewing mishap my wife can good-naturedly chide me about. So that's
a happy story.
Yeah, that's disastrous in a happy way. That's a good story.
And I remember that beer, the
Rye Wit?
15-minute, no, the 15-minute Saison.
Yeah,
that was a really good beer.
It was.
Turned into a kit. I think I sold 3 of them.
So
And
it was financially successful.
It was critically successful, financially a flop. But I was always disappointed because I thought it was such a good beer.
It was
I wanted
a good
people
beer.
to
I want to brew it. Now I want to brew it. That's more of a summer beer, though. Kind of. Kieran, disaster from Ireland. Kieran is from. I'm a quarter McCarty, so I've got some Irish.
Well, you're kind of a disaster from Ireland,
Yes.
too, then.
too. He's from the County Limerick.
Well, yeah.
He is. Kieran. Kieran says, I'd like to have 3... This is the last... I bring to you the final...
This is the
letter.
final one? There are no more.
That's when the audience cheers.
That's right.
And you say, may a rogue camel fall in love with your sister. Kieran says, I like to have 3 kegs of beer for the holidays. I have a Vienna lager and a tropical stout finished and lagering in the Keyser. Time to brew something nice and hoppy. How about an IPA? Something classic, a West Coast IPA. Is that a West Coast of Ireland or?
I just don't know. It could be New York.
It's so west, it's east.
It's very west.
Decision made. Friday Eve rolls around. Time to
Reykjavik Radler would be West Coast.
No, that's...
Would it?
Well, anything is west if you go all the way around the globe.
That's my joke.
Okay. Okay. I'm geographically challenged.
I'm gonna count that in the bad pun.
Yeah, there you go.
And that gives me a bingo.
Oh, bingo!
I've just been waiting on the joke. 6, 7, 14, and 10.
Okay, there you go.
All right, go ahead.
All right. Kieran says, a West Coast IPA. A decision made. Friday Eve rolls around. Time to prep the... Around here we call Friday Eve Thursday. But that's... I'm assuming he means Friday evening. Rolls around. Time to prep the water and grains. Have everything ready for the morning. She, who must be obeyed, says, why don't you take the kids to soccer practice? Now, notice that Kieran said soccer.
Yes, she did.
He.
Not he. Yes.
I'm assuming he.
Well, but his wife said take the kids.
Oh, that's right.
That's why I said she.
So I'm assuming that that's
So in Ireland they say soccer.
Well, I'm saying I
like that.
That's an accommodation for us. I don't think they say soccer.
No, we're accommodating the Irish. I'm telling you,
There's trouble.
You don't know how it works.
Okay. Fair enough. She's been doing most of the running around lately. I can always prep in the morning. She's away tomorrow with the kids anyway. Nice, quiet, peaceful brew day. Saturday morning, wave the family off. Time to start collecting RO water. Realized why I prepped the evening before. RO water is painfully slow. It's okay. I can prep the grains and hops and weigh out the salt additions. I should crush finer this time. My efficiency was poor last time. Nice and flowery. So crushed finer. Mm-hmm. All done. Drip, drop, drip. How slow can this RO go? Very, very slow. Only halfway there. Okay, I can heat the water I have. In she goes. Fire up the kettle to get the brew bag ready. Time goes by. Slowly drip, drip, drip. Hours later, all the water's collected and I've mashed in. It was worth the wait. Brewing in the bag. Brewing is fun. Kieran says, mash done. Remove the bag. Time to boil. Turn on both elements. Going to get this boil rocking. Nice hot break forming. Be done in no time now. Hot break hasn't changed much. Normally would boil faster. Don't see any movement in the wort. What's going on? Check the breakers. All looks okay. Both elements could both break at the same time. That's why I have 2 in the kettle. Check the cable. All okay. What am I going to do? Make a no-boil IPA? I don't fancy that. Nothing for it but to empty the 40 liters boil into plastic fermenters and check the elements. You guessed it. The elements are covered in floury gunk from the fine crush. No panic. I have a spare. Just the one. It will have to do. Slow boil better than no boil, right? That was stressful. I know. I'll listen to Basic Brewing on my phone. It'll help me improve the mood. Episode playing. James and Steve snug in my shirt pocket to keep me company. Boil goes well. A bit slow. Cool the wort and transfer into the fermenter. There's more beer than normal, less evaporation, I guess. Will it all fit? Foam is in the way. Can't see the level of the beer in the fermenter. James is talking about bubbles in bed. I know. I will lightly blow the foam to see where the level is. Get my head over the fermenter and start blowing. Out slips my phone. James and Steve and all plunk straight into the fermenter.
Foreign object in beer, number 5. I've been waiting for that.
And it's us. Think fast, grab the Star Sand spray, spray my arm, and grab the phone. Out it comes, James and Steve still talking, like they didn't notice. That's one heck of a phone.
Well, I've been dumped in a lot of beer in my past, and it's never kept me from talking yet.
After all that, I pitched the yeast, not giving up. After all the fun I had brewing it, it's in the fermenter. We'll let you know how it turns out. So,
can that also be considered a weird ingredient? I mean, the phone and the beer, they have to do something.
Yeah, well, I don't know why not. Okay, so since Kieran is from County Limerick, I decided to write a limerick.
Did you write a limerick?
I did.
Okay, good.
With disaster, our Kieran did flirt. He had Stephen and James in his shirt. When he stooped down to blow, in the pot they did go, and now they're all covered in wort.
You have a fine and steady hand.
Oh, that's all the letters.
That's great.
But now there's something we haven't done.
Oh, it's the capstone project.
I hope people appreciate that I wrote a limerick specially.
I very
for
much
the
appreciate
show.
it.
And I wrote it like in 2 minutes before you walked in the door.
That was a good
I was
limerick,
finishing up the limerick when you walked in. Now, do you feel comfortable opening
It's not
that
gonna
over
do
my
anything. Yeah,
over
it
my?
won't. So this is a pellicle beer, an accidental pellicle, and the pellicle came from elderberries, from local, not commercial. I don't even know if there's such a thing.
I'm going to take your picture as you.
I'm going to open this.
Okay.
Oh, whoa! Oh, there it goes.
Oh, there! See, I told you.
It's not that bad.
It's a gusher.
It's active. It's active, Eloise. Now, it's okay. So this was a disaster. I dumped the beer, but I bottled 2. There's a little bit of schmutz on your table.
Well, okay.
You got some
tissues.
Some tissue,
We get some paper towels.
and I bottled. This could be like we don't even want to.
These are clean too.
smell
So
this.
put these back.
We don't know for sure.
Okay.
But this was one of those moments.
That's a lot of foam.
That's a lot of foam. So it's working. You know it's alive.
Give us a cheers with the foam. There we go.
And it's underneath all that foam. The actual beer is actually really pretty. Now I don't know what to do here. Is Mikey here? He
won't eat it. He hates everything.
He hates everything.
Well, cheers.
Well, we're gonna try it. So, yeah.
No, it doesn't smell particularly awful. It's got literally 2 fingers of beer and 4 fingers of foam.
I'm tapping down the foam now.
Boy.
But it's actually real pretty. It's the color it was supposed to be. It was supposed to just be an amberish, American pale ale is what it was supposed to be.
Ooh.
It's not horrible, but it's not ooh.
It tastes like this is not a spice beer?
No.
It tastes like holiday spice.
Honestly, I don't remember what's in it for sure, but I'm certain I don't really remember the beer anymore. I just remember it was an extract beer that I had some dark grains, which I steeped.
I taste clove.
But isn't clove an off flavor?
Could be, yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't. It should just taste like an American pale ale. I think.
Oh, well, in that case,
it's weird.
Cinnamon. I taste cinnamon like allspice or cinnamon and clove, and don't you taste that?
Yeah. I also.
It doesn't taste bad. It's not nasty.
Actually, that's the thing. The beer doesn't taste
It's not nasty.
It's not nasty.
The head
It's not
doesn't
very-
want. The
it's
head
not really
doesn't
not
want to
very
go
good,
away.
though.
No, it's nothing I would drink a
No.
pint of. But
In fact, I'm done. Actually, you want to know the truth? The thing that tastes bad about it, which is the thing that tasted bad the day I bottled it, it tastes like cardboard.
oh,
I get cardboard.
huh.
And so I don't remember what that off flavor is, but
Well, it's just stale.
just kind of stale. It just doesn't. It's not right. So okay, well that was a good experiment. And the point was, it's like never completely throw it away because you never really know.
You never know.
Except for I did know. Okay.
Woo.
Well,
Well, this has been fun.
it has.
Thanks to everybody who wrote in. Thanks to Scott for the beers. As far as prize goes this year, I had some trouble last year with shipping, and I think still I haven't gotten some of your spice blend. You're making a face now.
Do you have anything good to drink? Because I got a bad taste in my mouth.
We got some Sizer in the fridge.
It's like I've worked in a cardboard factory all day.
This is you've finished all your. I've been reading this whole time. You've been finishing your
drinking.
samples.
I'm sorry to have
But
interrupted.
so anyway, so I want to make the prize this year electronic and deliverable electronically. So you and I challenge you, if you're up to it, let's do a video together
Okay.
that we can send out to these folks, and will be special. It won't be released to the general public.
Just to these.
Well, I'll probably do it to the Patreon people too, but because they actually pay money. but because I feel bad if I send out something and then some people don't get it. I mean, I literally last year could not. The post office wouldn't allow me to send to like Australia. I could not physically send packages to Australia.
Yeah.
I'll check this. I need to check again. I think I can do it now, and if so, I will send y'all your belated spice blends. Anyway, so we'll figure out something to do, something fun for you guys. But this has been a good show,
Yeah.
a good disaster.
Really good
show.
beers. Except
From
for the
Scott.
last one.
Yeah, except that last one.
And your beer was very good.
Oh, thank you. We got more somewhere. So anyway, there you go. Yeah. I hope everybody had a good holiday season. All the best for a safe and happy and disaster-free 2023.
Gee, Merry Christmas. I remember when I remember
Your mighty.
about 1970. I'm going to say it was 77, and I was standing at a grocery store in Raytown, Missouri, writing a check, and it was at Christmas time. I was writing the date, and I thought, what will the world be like when I'm 50? It's just in the rearview mirror.
Me too.
By a long ways. But in 1977, it wasn't.
Right.
If I had known, I would have, moved.
You turned out all right.
Yeah, it turned out all right. That's what they said about Aunt Minnie's meatloaf.
All right. I wish I had a beer. Oh, I got good beer to cheers with. You just don't.
Beer.
Okay. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. See y'all next year.
Next year it is.
Well, thanks again to Steve and to Scott for the delicious beers. And, of course, many thanks to everybody who sent in disaster stories this year. Here's hoping 2023 is disaster-free. I hope everyone has a safe, healthy, and happy new year. Be careful picking up those glass carboys. Whew. We'll see you on the other side. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. It's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voice, and we'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long until next year.